you can't go anywhere than to go to Supreme Court. For instance, currently we had an individual going straight to the Supreme Court for an interpretation over something that majority of the citizens feel that is a clear statement, whether the president should go for a third term. Meanwhile, the Constitution is saying that you can go for more than 2 terms. So if you make it too easy for everyone that you can just go and file at the Supreme Court. So imagine in every week, more and more people are filing because the Constitution says all constitutional interpretation should go to our Supreme Court. And you can't fault people for going because that is the law we have made. So such laws must be changed fundamentally. But I am also making a strong case that disregarding all the problems and issues we have as a country, it's high time our leaders, political leaders and judicial leaders, will have to look into it. We have so much overburdened the judges we have in the system, all the way from district court, circuit court, high court, this appeals court, and then the Supreme Court. They do not have any briefing space. So coming to cap the Supreme Court that we have, that this is strictly the number that we have, take care of the whole country, I mean, is seriously in disarray.
So you wouldn't expect the president...
Where we imported our democracy, we claim we have imported, but we refuse to go by some of the fundamentals and they adopted.
In other words,
their system.
In summary, you wouldn't expect the president to accept the recommendation of the recently reviewed constitution, the committee.
It won't work. But my counter proposal is that the Supreme Court should not only be sitting at one place. If we still want to maintain the current system, then they should divide the Supreme Court into sessions. But other than that, if we want to have a cap like the U.S. and others have, then we should reform our laws so that it strictly, only some serious matters will see or find their way into our apex court.
Thank you very much.
Other than that, with the system that we have, it's not feasible to keep only few judges there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kwesi, for speaking to us.
I'm grateful, my
And you heard that John Kwesi, he's a private legal practitioner, recently appointed a notaris public. Thank you very much for speaking to us and joining us. Now, let me run you through recommendations of the Constitutional Review Committee on the subject, as I referred to earlier. In line with the committee's earlier recommendation to streamline the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, thereby reducing its workload, the committee proposes the following constitutional reforms. 4.9.1 amend Article 1281 to provide that the Supreme Court shall consist of the Chief Justice and not more than 14 justices. The prescription of an upper limit will preserve appointment flexibility while safeguarding against excessive expansion of the court. 4.9.2, there should be no numerical cap imposed on the Court of Appeal and the High Court to allow for periodic adjustment in their composition in response to population growth, increased case loads, and evolving demands of justice delivery. We're bringing you some more here, and the transport operators have suspended their proposed 30% increase in public transport fares after postponing a scheduled meeting with the Ministry of Transport. The Ghana Private Road Transport Union, GPRTU, says the decision was taken to allow for the outcome of the first fuel pricing window, which takes effect on August 1. The union says the next review of pump prices will determine whether a fare adjustment is still necessary. Industry analysts are projecting another increase in fuel prices, citing rising international petroleum prices and renewed pressure on the global oil market. The GPRTU maintains that transport operators can no longer absorb the rising cost of fuel and vehicle spare parts, and says it will return to the negotiating table if the next pricing window fails to bring any relief. Meanwhile, the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC, is urging the government to reinstate the fuel price intervention introduced during the height of the Middle East crisis, arguing the measure previously lowered pump prices and eased the burden on transport operators, businesses, and commuters. Some 11 minutes past the hour of 12. When we come back, we'll bring you some more. Do stay with us.
Tia, Yadiaba, Adam.
And you're still here on the Midday News on 3FM 92.7. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, the Environmental Protection Agency says its ban on the production, importation, sale and use of styrofoam products is not negotiable and will be fully enforced from January 1, 2027. The authority announced the ban over growing concerns about the environmental and health risks associated with styrofoam waste. Addressing a public education outreach at the Makola Market ahead of the implementation date, the Chief Executive Officer of the EPA, Professor Nanama Kluche-Brown, said there will be no extension of the deadline, stressing that enforcement officers are on standby for deployment to ensure full compliance. The EPA is urging manufacturers, importers, retailers and food vendors to transition to environmentally friendly packaging before the ban takes effect.
There are alternatives, as you can see. We have shown or demonstrated a few here. We want to eat from papers instead of the styrofoam. We want to eat from products that are biodegradable because the styrofoams are not biodegradable. When it gets mixed up with the soil, it stays in forever without messing up at all. It doesn't degrade with the soil. And so, as demonstrated here by the Backstop Boys, aside that, it has huge impact on our health. We also heard from the EPA Director, Mr. Lomote, on the health impact of this styrofoam. When the hot food is served in a styrofoam, the material leached, and then we get microplastics that mix up with the food. Once it gets into you, it's carcinogenic. You can get cancer. You can get other sicknesses. When you set fire, in fact, it's highly inflammable as well. And we can't dispose this off easily. That is why we find them in our gutters and they are choking our gutters. We find them dirtying our environment. When you try burning them, they release also harmful substances. When you inhale, it also causes cancer of the lungs. And ordinary Ghanaians, for every ordinary Ghanaian, the ban is on January 1st, 2027. We don't want to see styrofoams in the country. We don't want to see mattresses made of styrofoam. We don't want to see ceiling materials made of styrofoam. We don't want to see packaging, any other packaging made of styrofoam. The EPA will enforce this right on January 1st, 2027.
And you had the Chief Executive Officer of the EPA, Professor Nanama Kluche-Brown. Let's go to our earlier story about the GPRTU deciding to suspend that 30% increase in public transport fares after postponing a scheduled meeting with the Ministry of Transport. We do have on the line with us Samuel Amwa, who is Deputy Public Relations Officer for the GPRTU. Good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
What informed, first of all, the decision to suspend the proposed 30% fare increase and indeed postpone today's meeting with the Ministry of Transport?
All right. Okay. So let me take it from the idea of coming up with a 30% fare increment proposal. You know, we earlier mentioned that we want the government to do something about the cost of the petroleum product and other components, and most especially the petroleum product. We stated that if the government don't do anything about it, that is when we also come up with a proposed 30% increment. So the Ministry of Transport, call a meeting. They call all the leadership of all the transport operators, and then we table the issue. After a lengthy deliberation on the issue, the ministry, told the leadership that government is still working on things to make sure that fuel price will come down as we are expecting. And so therefore we should hold on with the decision of coming up with this 30% increment. Actually, it was a hard pill for us to swallow, but we understood them in a way because we know very well that next price window is just around the corner. By Friday, another window will open, and it will show clearly if it happens that it's still going up. We'll also come back and think of the next line of action. If it happens that it comes down, then we also know what to do. So we ended the meeting by agreeing to suspend our proposed 30% increment, but waiting to see what will happen at the next price window for us to see the next line of action.
Indeed, and you've answered my next question, but if the new fuel pricing window results in another increase in pump prices, is the GPRTU likely to insist on the full 30% fare hike?
Yes, because the main reason why we suspended this proposed 30% is that they gave us an assurance. They promised that they are working on things to make sure that the fuel will not go up or there will be some reduction. So that is what we relied on. So if it happens that it fails, then it means that we can't hold on with what we are saying now. Because as I'm speaking to you, drivers will work at the close of the day. The money they will get, they will use all to buy fuel. They can't make their sales. And counters, if the counters don't meet their sales, then it means that when the vehicles get spoiled, there is no money to repair them. That is how come, during the rush hours, you see more passengers getting stranded. You see, and we don't want that to happen. So we are waiting to see what will happen at the next price window. Then we also know what to do.
Mr. Amoah, thank you so much for speaking to us.
You're welcome.
And you had Samuel Amoah, he's Deputy Public Relations Officer for the GPRTU. Let's bring you some more here on the Midday News on 3FM 92.7. And the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, is demanding greater transparency and accountability in the utilization of Ghana's petroleum revenues. The committee says the Ghanaians must be able to clearly track how much oil money the country receives, where it is invested, and the impact of projects funded with the proceeds. There's more in the following report.
Ghana's oil revenue is meant to finance development and improve the lives of citizens. But for the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, the big question is whether the money is being used transparently and on projects that deliver lasting value. During a public engagement and monitoring tour for Boase, the committee says it identified projects listed in its report that could not be traced on the ground.
We've used our petroleum revenues prudently, generally. But there are also concerns. I mean, there are instances where projects don't even exist. There are instances where we've questioned the quality of the projects done with petroleum revenues. There are instances where there's no community participation in the selection of the projects. So you do the projects and the project ends up being abandoned. The communities don't use them. So all these are knotty issues that we've identified.
The concerns, however, are not limited to Obuasi. In the Adansi North and Adansi Asogli districts, the committee found that while some projects have been funded with petroleum revenues, many residents have little or no information about them.
Most of them were not even aware that parts of the projects that have been financed with petroleum revenue indeed were even funded with petroleum revenue at all. It was quite engaging, quite enlightening for them as well. And hopefully the information that we have passed on to them, it empowers them to be able to demand more accountability from their leaders as far as the utilization of these revenues are concerned.
For the Adansi Asogli District Chief Executive, Abedakura, PIAC's engagement with residents is a step in the right direction.
The forum has enlightened we, the citizens, And from today onwards, we will be much interested in every project that comes into our districts or our constituencies.
PIAC says it will continue its monitoring and public engagement activities as it pushes for greater transparency, stronger accountability, and more effective use of Ghana's petroleum revenues.
Ibrahim Abubakar brought us that report from the Ashanti region. Now, the president of the Gabon Breeze, Clotaire Olugui Nguema, has arrived in Ghana for a 3-day official visit from July 28 to July 30 at the invitation of President John Mahama. President Olugui Nguema was met in arrival at the Jubilee Lounge by President Mahama. The Gabonese head of state was accompanied by a high-level delegation comprising government ministers, senior government officials, and members of the Gabonese business community. The visit is expected to deepen the long-standing relations between Ghana and Gabon and strengthen cooperation across key sectors of mutual interest. President Mahama and his Gabonese counterpart will hold a tete-a-tete meeting before leading official bilateral talks at the Jubilee House later on Tuesday. The discussions will review the current state of bilateral relations and explore new areas of cooperation beyond existing engagement. Now, after years of learning in deteriorated wooden and mud structures, pupils in Bronsako and Bodoma in the Bekwai municipality are finally set for a major transformation. The assembly has completed the construction of new 3-unit classroom blocks for both communities, bringing hope to pupils and teachers who have endured years of harsh learning conditions. Ibrahim Abubakar again.
These were the classrooms pupils of Brosanko and Bodoma had to conduct their studies in for years. Deteriorated wooden and mud structures with little to offer in terms of safety or comfort were used for teaching and learning. But that long-standing challenge is now giving way to hope. The Bekwai Municipal Assembly, through the District Assembly's Common Fund, has completed the construction of 3-unit classroom blocks for the two communities. The development is expected to provide a safer and more conducive environment for teaching and learning.
Students are on vacation. From next academic year, it should be ready for the students. And as you have seen, we are putting finishing touches on them. Is the painting, and then in every classroom structure that we built, we usually will add facilities like toilet and then water. So you can see that the drilling is done. We are yet to put up the poly tank so that the students will also have a good place of convenience, and then water. The community will also enjoy the water.
The Bekwai Municipal Chief Executive also inspected an ongoing Chief's Compound project at Bodoma. The facility has reached the roofing stage, raising hopes of improved access to health care for residents who have long faced challenges accessing basic health services. The MCE expressed confidence that the project will be completed soon and made operational to serve the community.
Ibrahim Abubakar filed that report. Now, the International Monetary Fund has completed the 6th and final review of Ghana's $3 billion extended credit facility program, clearing the way for the immediate release of about $371 million. The fund says Ghana's performance under the program has been broadly satisfactory, pointing to falling inflation, improved international reserves, a stronger fiscal position, and a reduced risk of debt distress. The IMF has, however, warned that these gains could be lost without sustained fiscal discipline, stronger revenue mobilization, and reforms in the energy sector, cocoa, and financial sectors. Ghana will now transition to a new 36-month non-financing policy coordination instrument intended to anchor economic reforms and maintain investor and donor confidence beyond the bailout program. And some more again, in the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation, GIADEC, says the government is not selling the Volta Aluminium Company, Valco, but is instead pursuing a strategic equity capitalization that will involve bringing in a private strategic investor. GIADEC Chief Executive Officer Randolph Chumesiankra says the arrangement will require the government to cede a portion of its ownership to Valco to the investor, who will bring in capital, technical expertise and support the management of the company. He says the move is aimed at reviving and modernizing Valco, which has been operating significantly below its installed production capacity. Mr. Chumesi says the government is seeking an investment of about $600 million US, with other reports putting the broader investment requirement at up to $750 million to restore the smelter and expand production.
If I understand clearly why the sentiments expressed yesterday at the demonstration, it is just about job security, nothing more, nothing less. I don't think if you go to Valco today, you'll find any worker there who will tell you that they don't need that support, that capital or financial support. They need it. They are the ones there, they know it best. They need it. And so this whole discussion about workers are not aware or workers do not, I don't subscribe to it. The workers are very much aware. Okay. But the point is, we can't communicate what has not been done. We are yet to start negotiations. The ministry is here now putting together a team which will be government's negotiation team to engage with the investors to finalize the definitive terms of whatever is going to be done. So until that is done, I don't know what we are expected to communicate.
And that was the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation, GIADEC, Randolph Chumesiankra. And he was speaking earlier on New Day on TV3. That's it for the Midday News here on 3FM 92.7. My name is Beatrice. Thank you very much for joining us on the program this afternoon. Coming up shortly is Business Daily with Bismarck Awusa. Log on to 3news.com for more news.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Business Daily on 3FM 92.7 with me, Bismarck Awusa. Coming up, Chamber of Petroleum Consumers Ghana, COPEC, rejects proposed 30% fare hike, urges transport operators to accept 10 to 15% instead.
We want to appeal to these transport operators to reconsider their decision as they go into negotiation with the transport unions to consider perhaps some 10%, 15% maximum.
Also ahead, KPMG backs customs reforms to curb undervaluation, but warns tighter rules could raise import costs and weaken Ghana's trade competitiveness. We'll hear from tax partner Justina Amatekwe.
Eventually, if these areas are not managed well, it can affect the volumes of imports and ultimately the revenues that are expected to be realized from that angle.
Plus, services sector continue to drive Ghana's growth as agriculture and manufacturing lag behind. We'll bring you details of our headlines and other stories shortly. Please stay. Thanks for your company. Now to the details. The Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC Ghana, says the proposed 30% increase in transport fares by operators is too high. Head of Research and Training at COPEC, Paul Eric Ofori, has appealed to the GPRTU and other transport unions to reconsider and cap any adjustment at a maximum of 15%. Transport unions are scheduled to meet with the Ministry of Transport today, Tuesday, July 28, to discuss the proposed hike. Operators argue that rising fuel prices and the cost of vehicle spare parts have made the current fare structure unsustainable. The outcome of the meeting is expected to determine the new fares for the commuters nationwide.
In anticipation of the next window, fuel prices are projected to see an upward adjustment. Again, it is within the purview of transport operators, i.e. GPRTU and concerned drivers, to also adjust their fares. That notwithstanding, the increment they are requesting for is quite on the higher side, which will eventually break the necks of consumers. So we want to appeal to these transport operators to reconsider their decision as they go into negotiation with the transport unions, to consider perhaps some 10%, 15% maximum, so that we can all be on a win-win page, just so consumers can also have a sigh of relief.
And that was Head of Research and Training at COPEC, Paul Eric Ofori. Meanwhile, the Chamber is urging government to reinstate the fuel price intervention introduced during the height of the Middle East crisis, arguing that the measure previously lowered palm prices and eased the burden on transport operators, businesses, and commuters. Moving on, tax partner at professional services firm KPMG, Justina Amate-Ekwe, has described the government's proposed customs reforms in the 2026 mid-year budget review as a significant step towards tightening revenue mobilization and tackling long-standing customs undervaluation. However, she cautions that if the reforms are not carefully implemented, they could increase import costs, create barriers to trade, reduce import volumes, and ultimately undermine Ghana's competitiveness and the very revenue gains the measures seek to achieve.
For importers and manufacturers, the immediate business impact is on inventory planning. We see this to help them plan their inventory more effectively and also their working capital. We also believe that it is going to afford them the opportunity to be able to verify the aging of their stock and be able to plan their stock for their business operations very appropriately. We also heard that there is a proposed first port of entry for transit goods, which is also a good measure for revenue enhancement. We also believe that in the long run, there are key things that government needs to consider in order to protect the competitiveness of our country, considering the fact that it has a potential of increasing cost of imports and also causing potential barriers to entry. Eventually, if these areas are not managed well, it can affect the volumes of imports and ultimately the revenues that are expected to be realized from that angle.
And that was tax partner at professional services firm KPMG, Justina Amate-Ekwe. The president of the Ghana Union of Traders Associations, GUTA, Clement Boateng, says Ghana's recent economic growth is being driven largely by the services sector, with agriculture and manufacturing yet to record comparable improvements. Speaking on Business Focus, the president noted that the services sector has emerged as the main contributor to Ghana's growth, while the agriculture and manufacturing sectors continue to face challenges.
Largely, the growth that we are enjoying is coming from the services, sector, and it is the services sector, that is performing. Because if we want to talk about agric and manufacturing, they are not, doing so much well. So the growth that we are enjoying is attributed to the, service sector, because the service sector is doing good as a result of the positive macroeconomic indicators that we are enjoying. Yes, so that is what I would say about that.
Meanwhile, the GUTA president, Dr. Clement Boateng, says shipping lines have failed to comply with the directive despite a High Court ruling upholding the approved fee following an earlier interlocutory injunction that temporarily halted its implementation. He argues that the continued non-compliance is increasing the cost of doing business and is urging the authority to take immediate enforcement action.
Since the court made the pronouncement, the shipping lines are still charging their old fees, which contravenes the court's ruling. And so Guta, as a major stakeholder, came out with this statement that it's about time these shipping lines respect the laws of the country, because you cannot be in somebody's country which is governed by law as a sovereign state, and then the regulator issues a directive and then you don't want to comply. What they are saying is that they have not received authority from their principals abroad asking them, to charge the shippers authority fee. And so therefore, as far as they are concerned, they are still, charging the outrageous fees. So we have come out with this statement, to tell the authorities that it's about time they put their feet down and then make sure that the shipping lines comply with the shippers authority. Otherwise, then we live in a country that, laws doesn't work, and then each and everyone can do whatever he or she likes.
Clement Boateng is president of the Ghana Union of Traders Associations, GUTA. Before we go, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has completed a sixth and final review of Ghana's $3 billion extended credit facility program, clearing the way for the immediate release of about $371 million. The fund says Ghana's performance under the program has been broadly satisfactory, pointing to falling inflation, improved international reserves, a stronger fiscal position, and a reduced risk of debt distress. The IMF has, however, warned that these gains could be lost without sustained fiscal discipline, stronger revenue mobilization, and reforms in the energy, cocoa, and financial sectors. Ghana will now transition to a new 36-month non-financing policy coordination instrument, PCI, intended to anchor economic reforms and maintain investor and donor confidence beyond the bailout program. And that brings us to the end of Business Daily on 3FM 92.7 with me, Bismarck. Also, for more business stories, please check out our website 3news.com. Thanks for your company.